Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Friday, September 25th edition of your favorite 1-hour NFL and college football program. Welcome to the Blitz Zone. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Rosen, and I'm coming to you live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York. And here to help me, of course, throughout this journey to the golden anniversary, Super Bowl 50, that is, Mr. Jamie, the Sportsman Hickson.
Eric, always a pleasure speaking with you and working with you. We are coming off a rather unspectacular week 2 of the season. I just hope that week 3 can be a little bit more of a dramatic turnaround here.
Well, week 2 definitely had its share of Twilight Zone victories, if you will. Seeing the Raiders beat the Ravens, seeing the Jaguars defeat the Dolphins, all right? And almost seeing the Bills beat the Patriots, but coming just a little bit short.
Yeah, one possession short, but that was just apples and oranges there.
And then seeing some teams that were in the playoffs last year at 0-2, like Detroit, Seattle. Oh my.
Detroit, Seattle, and also Baltimore. They're both on the other side of the win column. This is the week where they really need to make a statement and try and make something of the rest of the season, because if not, it's going to be almost impossible to bounce back from 0-3.
And that brings me to that segment that 2-0 what? You know, it really just astounds me to see a team like Seattle, but unfortunately their problems contribute with Cam Chancellor not being there in the secondary. He's the most important ingredient in that Legion of Boom defense, to go with Richard Sherman, their lockdown cornerback, and their free safety, Earl Thomas. And Thomas and Chancellor are the best safety duos in the league. So those two together, it's like Jordan without Pippen.
Yeah. It's no coincidence that the Seahawks have struggled defensively without Chancellor in there, but it's not just his absence that's been their problem. Their other problem is they're still trying to figure things out with their offensive line. So this coming weekend is really going to show exactly where their NFC title defense hopes really stand.
Yes, and figuring out what to do with Jimmy Graham since they acquired him from New Orleans. He had only one reception out of 2 targets last week against Green Bay. That's not what you do with a guy who is one of the best red zone threats that the Saints had in the last 5 years.
If there is a saving grace in this, is that they've only played 2 games. They've got a ton of the season left over to try and correct things, and they definitely do have a lot of corrections to make.
The Ravens really need to get their running game established. Justin Forsett, who was one of the best top 5 running backs last year, they need to get back to that formula of running the ball very well, and their secondary needs to improve.
And you mentioned the Lions also at 0-2. They were a playoff team last year. I think this could be the last we see of the Lions in the playoffs for quite a while, because now that Ndamukong Suh is gone from their defensive line, they're only going to struggle mightily to make something of their pass rush for the rest of the season. There's also the issue of the Lions' running game. You need a proper running game to try and complement Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, and they just have not found that yet.
Yeah, you mentioned the rushing defense. They were the number 1 defense in the league against the run, giving up 69 yards last year. This year, they've given up an equivalent of 142 yards on the ground. That's 28th in the league. So right there, you mentioned Ndamukong Suh's absence. Huge impact right there. Even though they have Ziggy Ansah, who's been their stalwart for the last few years in that line, but they can't just do it with him. They need some other pieces surrounding Ziggy. And the running game, Amir Abdullah has to have the performance of his lifetime this week, and Matthew Stafford cannot get hit. That offensive line needs to protect him better.
Why is Amir Abdullah not getting his shot, especially after he sparkled in the preseason? Isn't the idea of rookies who really make their case to be on the roster to get more playing time in the regular season? That way they can try and fill some sort of hole?
It's the offense. I think the offensive line definitely has a lot of issues towards it. Protecting Stafford. As we saw last week, Stafford got hit badly.
Yeah.
He had a lot of rib and chest injuries last week. There were even talks of him possibly not even playing this week.
And him being the gamer and the tough guy that he is, keep in mind Matthew Stafford once played with a broken collarbone. He's going to go all out on this. He does not want to make any excuses for why the Lions are going to possibly sink to 0-3. He wants to be in there for the entire game.
And how about some of these other two 0-2 teams, like the Saints and the Texans?
Yeah.
Even though they weren't in the playoffs last year, but still, the Saints are an organization that unfortunately had a lot of cap issues. They had to let some of their players get traded, like Kenny Stills getting traded to Miami. As we mentioned, Jimmy Graham being traded to Seattle. Junior Gillette, one of their best pass rushers, they had to let him go. Their running game is a lot different. Even though they have Mark Ingram as their number one back, they got C.J. Spiller, who they acquired.
Yeah.
But the turnaround on this team has really been terrible. And last week, it really the offensive line, really hurt. One of their offensive line hurt Breeze to the point where
he wound up having his shoulder really badly damaged, and he's going to miss the weekend.
I know, and they need him this week against the Panthers. Because who they got going for them? Luke
McCown. That is their idea of a sensible backup. Luke McCown, a guy who has done nothing, just like his brother Josh has not done anything to distinguish himself in that sport.
If I were them, I would put the kid Garrett Hartley, who they acquired from Colorado State. That is a better option, honestly, than Luke McCown.
Yeah, but it's painfully obvious that the Saints are going to not promote their third-string quarterback over a guy who at least is a veteran, not a proven veteran, but a veteran, if you ask me.
Proven in commercials, maybe, but not on the field.
Yeah, obviously you're referencing that commercial that he did. I think it was for Verizon or for DirecTV.
I think it was one of those batteries. I think Energizer.
The Energizer battery, yeah.
But yeah, it's ridiculous nonetheless. So now that we talked about some of these and the Texans, by the way, their defense is all right, needs to be better.
Yeah.
And the running game without Arian Foster is non-existent, and the quarterback situation is murky at best. Okay, so we had some of those issues, but injury-wise, Severian Jenkins for the Buccaneers, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with a strained shoulder. Then you got a guy like Kiko Alonso, who last year with the Bills tore his ACL in training camp, missed the entire 2014 season. Then this past week against Dallas in that disastrous loss, partially tore his ACL.
You think the Eagles want a mulligan on that trade for LaShawn McCoy?
I 100,000,000% agree with you. They need a mulligan on every move they made that the mad scientist Chip Kelly made in Philadelphia.
That's a really important point. This was a Chip Kelly call to try and successfully send away LaShawn McCoy for Kiko Alonso.
And not just that, letting Jeremy Maclin go to Kansas City, terrible move. Letting Evan Mathis go to Denver and Todd Hermans to Indianapolis, terrible moves right there. Picking up DeMarco Murray in free agency with a guy that's had, 11 yards in the first 2 weeks, 16 after contact.
Can I mention Nick Foles for Sam Bradford? How's that working out?
Not any better. The guy has a pass rating below 80. It's just, and he, on that shotgun formation in the Dallas game, he fumbles on the snap, and Hayden recovers it. It was really it was a mishmash of crap, if you ask me, with Philadelphia. And I feel bad for those diehard Eagle fans.
Yeah.
And when you piss Eagle fans off in their media, and you don't do right by them, forget it. They will let you know about in the most negative way possible.
Yeah, and I said that this was going to be a two-team race in the East between the Cowboys and the Eagles. Right now, the Cowboys, in spite of the manpower shortage have shown that they are the class of the NFC East right now.
Well, you speak of the Cowboys, of course, but honestly, this is the NFC least.
Yeah.
You know, they are 2-0. Yes, they are undefeated, but let's not forget, they are now without their top quarterback with a broken collarbone and their top wide receiver, Des Bryant, because of a foot injury for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And Romo, thank goodness, didn't need surgery on that clavicle because it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, that was the same clavicle that he broke entirely 4 years ago. Was it 4 years ago?
Back in 2010, he did that.
2010, he wound up breaking his collarbone entirely, and he missed more than half the season.
Yeah, it was back in week 7 of that season. But because of the injury to Romo, it prompted the Cowboys to make a deal with the Buffalo Bills to acquire Matt Castle. And the crazy thing about Matt Castle, he was brought in training camp to be the number 1 quarterback over E.J. Manuel and Tyrod Taylor. Then he was put down to the number 3 spot behind Manuel and the starter Tyrod Taylor. Then they cut Castle after training camp. Then they sign him back. And now they just traded him to the Cowboys and exchanged the Cowboys. Also, they sent Buffalo a 2017 fifth-round pick. For
At least, what's that?
Yeah, they sent, not only did the Cowboys, they sent a 2017 fifth-round pick, and the Cowboys got Castle and a 2017 seventh-round pick.
Yep. At least Matt Castle has proven himself before. I mean, keep in mind he was Tom Brady's replacement when Brady mangled his knee several years ago, and Castle did pretty well for himself. But the key with Castle is he needs to be surrounded by some good players in order for him to be effective, because when he went to Kansas City and Minnesota, he was not the same player. This time, he's going to have at least a respectable crop of receivers to work with. Of course, it is son Des Bryant, but at the same time,
you got Terrence Williams, and you got Cole Beasley. These are not bad receivers to have to work with.
And he's also got a good offensive line to work behind as well.
You got 3 guys who were Pro Bowlers last year. You also have Gavin Escobar, a guy that is going to be the heir apparent to Jason Witten, who, by the way, Jason Witten may not even play this week against Atlanta. He's played in 192 consecutive games, so let's hope that's not the case. And let's see what works out. Now, let's go to Miami and South Florida. And Ndamukong Suh in the offseason was the highest priced free agent acquisition in terms of having a nasty pass rusher. 6 years, $114 million. Well, 6 years, $114 million after the contract was signed. What has he got in the first 2 weeks of the season for the Dolphins?
Nothing.
3 tackles. No sacks.
Like I said, nothing. And he also was basically ad-libbing some of his own defensive schemes, as opposed to following instructions of the D coordinator.
Yeah, there were people allegedly saying that he was definitely not going by the script in this past week's loss to Jacksonville 23-20, which still to me is the twilight zone of all victories.
Now, do you think that maybe he should take a little advice from his D coordinator?
Kevin Coyle, who, by the way, is a Staten Islander, who was a coach at Monsignor Farrell High School, which is crazy. I know.
Long time ago. It's great to see a Staten Island guy make it to the big time.
I know. Maybe you should listen to him this week, especially you got your home opener since they've been on the road the first 2 weeks. They got their home opener, 4 o'clock South Florida against the Bills. We'll get into that a bit later. Speaking of the Dolphins again, they traded their cornerback Will Davis to the Ravens. This was a guy who was a late-round draft pick. They're going to receive a late-round draft pick for it. He was a number 3 overall pick back in 2013. He came back from an ACL injury, didn't play much, and he's played 15 games without a start in 2 NFL seasons.
There you go.
And he's mostly like a nickel or dime package corner that he's going to be behind Jimmy Smith, Ladarius Webb, and Kyle Arrington when he goes to Baltimore. And they certainly could use the depth and help. And the Raiders claim David Amerson, the cornerback, off waivers just one day after he was released by the Washington Redskins.
Well, they need as much help in their secondary as they can, because Charles Woodson is not getting any younger.
Yeah, he just hurt his shoulder and all that in week 2. Now, speaking of week 2, let's get into some of the games, starting with the New York Giants at home against the Atlanta Falcons.
Do we really have to? I mean, do we really have to relive a second straight blown 10-point fourth quarter lead?
Unfortunately, we do, and it was Julio Jones who set up the game-winning touchdown with a 37-yard pass to set the game-winning 2-yard run by Devonta Freeman, who, by the way, will probably be the starter this week because Tevin Coleman will probably be out against Dallas. With about a minute 14 remaining in that game. And, yes, Atlanta beat the Giants 24-20.
And whereas it was not a decision to throw the ball instead of keeping the ball on the ground that cost the Giants, it was stupid penalties. It was blown assignments that wound up costing the Giants in this game.
And not looking at the clock. Bad game management.
Once again, horrible clock management in this one.
And, of course, the New York Jets Monday night beat Indianapolis 20-7. It was a really
outstanding defensive performance by the Jets. I mean, give them credit. Going up against a potential Super Bowl contender in the Colts with one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, they just all in out snuffed the guy. And who was the one that led the way for the Jet D? Darrelle Revis.
Yes, 3 turnovers in that game, including the big one, the fumble recovery off of Frank Gore.
Yep.
In the second half. That was a huge play right there because the Jets were just leading 10-0 at the time. I think that was the turning point in the game right there.
As great as Luck has been in what is now his 4th season, he still has a bad habit of turning the ball over at the most inopportune time. He really needs to solve his issues in protecting the football. I don't know if it's a mechanical issue or, well, maybe it's more of a fundamental issue. He really needs to figure out his fundamentals if he wants to take care of the football.
And an inconsistent offensive line, unfortunately. Since he came to the league in 2012, he hasn't had the same consistency of offensive line. He's had to go through 9 centers, 8 people on the right guard line, like everywhere. If you look, even on Monday Night Football when they were doing that imaginary slot machine for the offensive line, it was ridiculous to see how many offensive linemen he's had to go through in many positions. So right there, Grigson really needs to do a better job in getting better offensive linemen to protect
And with those 2 major acquisitions that they made, getting Frank Gore and Andre Johnson, nowhere in sight have we seen them on the score sheet.
Not yet. Maybe this week they will against Tennessee. All right, how about the Rams going into Washington, losing 24-10 with the 3rd-round draft pick, Matt Jones, 123 yards on 10 carries, and he got a big 39-yard run in the first quarter alone.
I think this might be where the Redskins are going to have to try and make something of their season is with the running game, because right now, neither RG3 nor Kirk Cousins are doing anything for them right now.
And then, as I mentioned, in the Imaginarium of the Twilight Zone, the Jaguars beat the Dolphins 23-20, and it was a huge clutch kick by Jason Myers from Marist College of Poughkeepsie, New York, with a 20-yarder with about 40 ticks left in the game.
Speaking of clutch, Blake Bortles actually won a close game. Could this be the game that propels him a little bit further down the road? We're going to have to wait and see.
And not only that, he didn't turn the ball over, and he didn't get sacked.
That's more important.
And that's despite the fact that Luke Jokel didn't even play in this game as blindside. And how about another Imaginarium victory? The Raiders beat the Ravens 37-33 on a game-winning 12-yard touchdown catch to Seth Roberts with about 26 seconds left in the clock. And Joe Flacco missing Steve Smith Sr. in the end zone. And personal foul penalty on Timmy Jernigan.
Yeah.
And the Will Hill III, that negated the interception at the end.
As big of a win as this is for the Raiders, because quite frankly, they need as many wins as they can get. The Ravens looked dreadful defensively, especially against one of the worst offenses in the entire league.
Oh, yep.
Sorry, but who's the quarterback for the Raiders? Is it still Derek Carr?
Yes.
Derek Carr is not that great.
But
he's not that great.
You got to give it up to him. Against a Ravens team that most people would never expect the Raiders to win, he had a career-high 354 yards. Him and Amari Cooper clicking on all cylinders. That was a clutch, big-time victory.
I think that might have been his career game right there, the one career game that we've seen from him.
And they went
so far
7-9, that game-winning drive, by the way. It was a big game for him. I think he still has a lot of potential. Now, let's go into Philadelphia territory on Broad Street, and they lose 20-10 at home against the Cowboys. Kyle Wilbur blocking the punt, 26 yards for a touchdown. Brandon Ween throwing the 42 yards to Terrence Williams, who's going to be big for fantasy owners in the next few weeks. They win 20-10.
Absolutely 100%. Very, very little offensive performances by either side. The Eagles are in serious, serious trouble. They've got to try and right themselves for week 3, because if not, it could be a long, long season for them.
How about the Panthers beating the Texans 24-17, 2 touchdowns from Cam Newton and a somersault touchdown from one Cam Newton. He raced up the middle on a draw play, tumbles over defensive back Raheem Moore, nearly for the landing for 3 yards. It was truly watching Superman in action.
Yeah, it was also like night and day. I mean, Cam Newton, worlds apart from the quarterback rotation that the Texans have. Naturally, he was going to make more big plays in this one.
And Ryan Mallett, of course, starting this week because the Brian Hoyer, who had a terrible performance week 1, against Kansas City. So it wasn't any better. He did almost get them to tie the game in the end, but he threw an interception. It just was not their day. All right, the Patriots beat the Bills 40-32. Tom Brady, 466 yards, second most in his career, and the most the Bills defense has given up to any opposing quarterback in their history.
That just shows you the supreme play of Tom Brady as an NFL quarterback. For him to get that close to 500 yards passing against a really talented Bills defense just goes to show you how great he is and how great he is going to continue to be even at 38 years of age.
And they almost lost in that fourth quarter. If it wasn't for Tyrod Taylor throwing that pass that tipped off the hands of Sammy Watkins into the hands of Logan Ryan for the interception, this could have been a different game.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It was good that the Patriots won, but you know what? Their offense is going to have to do the winning for them because their defense clearly dropped the ball in that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
The Vikings beat the Lions 26-16 on 192 total yards from Adrian Peterson. And what a game for the guy. He was just
dynamic? Yes, he was. And this is going to have to be the Vikings modus operandi for the rest of the season. Pound the ball to Adrian Peterson. That way you can take some of the pressure off of Teddy Bridgewater.
It was like after almost 2 years at home. Finally, they got to see him play. Now let's see what happens. The Chargers lose to the Bengals. You know the frozen ball that they've had in the past. Well,
Yeah.
of course, the Chargers losing 24-19 to the Bengals, and Phillip Rivers throws 2 touchdowns to break Dan Fouts' all-time record of 254 touchdowns, and Dan Fouts was calling the game for CBS in the booth watching this unfold.
Pretty ironic here. And when you consider this, Dan Fouts threw all of his touchdowns in 15 years playing for the Chargers. Phillip Rivers did it in his 12th NFL season. And Dan Fouts worked with guys like Lionel James, Chuck Muncie, Kellen Winslow Sr., and also Charlie Joyner.
Yep.
A bunch of guys, I think 4 out of the 5 guys mentioned are in the Hall of Fame. Phillip Rivers has had to work with Antonio Gates, one of the best tight ends in the league, and a different crop of receivers, it seems like, each of his 12 years there.
As opposed to San Diego, unfortunately, losing this game, but Cincinnati, man, the running game went from Jeremy Hill with his 2 fumbles lost to Giovanni Bernard with 123 yards. They are a good running back tandem, but honestly, Giovanni had a better game, including a 26-yard run. They win 24-19. They're 2-0 on the year. The Cardinals defeat the Bears 48-23. Carson Palmer's 4 touchdowns in that game, 3 in the first game alone against New Orleans. He's had 7 touchdowns altogether. He's 15-2 in his last 17 games. Fitzgerald had 3 of those 4 touchdowns. It was like classic Larry Fitzgerald all over again.
Amazing. Carson Palmer was an under 500 quarterback with the Bengals and the Raiders. He's 12 games over 500 in 2+ seasons with the Cardinals.
And you
Go figure.
And not only that, how about David Johnson, the rookie? The opening kickoff, 108 yards. Okay, Jameis Winston finally gets his first win, 26-19 over the Saints. And for passing for a touchdown, running for a touchdown after his 2-interception week 1 performance, good for him.
At least Winston was able to not play as intimidated as he did in the opening week of the Tennessee game.
And then the 49ers, they lose badly to the Steelers, 43-18. Roethlisberger, 369 yards, 3 TDs, and DeAngelo Williams had 3 rushing scores on the day. That's tying a franchise record right there.
DeAngelo Williams is going to be a really important player for the Steelers in their backfield. He'll take a lot of pressure off Big Ben.
Along with Le'Veon Bell returning this week. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the Titans lose their first game of the year to the Cleveland Browns 28-14, but Johnny Manziel had a good performance. But what does he get?
Benched.
Yep.
That's what he gets for having a good game. He gets benched. And did I tell you to please take it easy on Marcus Mariota? He has one good game, and people are making him out to be the rookie of the year. Give the kid a chance, please.
And he got sacked 7 times in that game.
Just goes to show you that you need a good offensive line in order to function, but you also need to know when to throw the ball away, and that's Marcus Mariota's one mistake right there.
All right, that was week 2 of the NFL season. Let's quickly get into week 3 starting last night at the Meadowlands. It was the New York Giants trying to avoid an 0-3 start, going up against their division rivals, the Washington Redskins.
Did you know that the Giants and the Redskins are the oldest rivalry in the NFC East? The Giants and the Redskins have met each other at least 150 times since 1937.
In this 151st meeting of their rivalry, Odell Beckham's clutch 30-yard touchdown, Ruben Randall's 41-yarder, combining with the fact that Eli, yes, granted, played terrible in the first 2 games. He didn't intercept the ball yet again in this game, and they won 32-21, including that opening safety with Rashad Jennings, the interception by Prince Amukamara that led to the rushing touchdown, by Andre Williams.
And who would have thunk Ruben Randall would be the star receiver in this game and not ODB?
It was a great performance for them.
And an important performance by the Giants, too. They needed this win so badly for their next 10 days off.
And now let's go into the 15 games, about 32 minutes on the clock right here. We got the Eagles, Fly Eagles, Fly Eagles Fly, visiting the New York Jets.
Yeah, well, the Eagles have not been flying so well this season. And just to give you an idea, Sam Bradford is the quarterback for the Eagles, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback for the Jets. 2 guys who have not necessarily been great, although Bradford's problem is staying on the field more often than not. Fitzpatrick has just been unspectacular.
How about converting third downs? That's where their troubles are. They've converted 5 of 23. That's not how you win games. You got to be able to keep your team on the field and keep the opposing team's offense off the field.
And what has been the Jets' saving grace? Their ground game. Chris Ivory has been tremendous for them.
And their defense, 10 takeaways in the first 2 games. That's the most they've ever done in a long time. It's a team record through 2 games.
And lost in this whole thing, Mark Sanchez is going to be making his first appearance at Giants Stadium, well, now MetLife Stadium, against his former team, the Jets.
If I'm the Eagles, honestly, I would put Sanchez in as your starter this week. You can't get any worse.
Actually, they can. Mark Sanchez is a turnover waiting to happen, and that's going to be the reason why the Jets win this game, because they're going to be capitalizing. That's why the Jets have been committing or forcing 10 turnovers in the first 2 games this season, because their defense has been good, but they've been more opportunistic than anything else. That's going to be the key to this weekend. The Jets have to be opportunistic against a rather mediocre quarterback like Sam Bradford. That's when he's got 2 good knees.
Here's the problem, though. This could be a trap game. You got to worry
no doubt.
about the game time decision with Decker, who's their second receiver on the team besides Marshall, and their top cornerback tandem of Revis, your lockdown guy, who's supposed to be locking up with Jordan Matthews, and your other cornerback, Antonio Cromartie. Who knows if they're going to play? I think they will. Even Ivory could be a game time decision. I think he will play as well. I'm still going to go with the Jets. Now, you got a battle of 2-0 teams in Arlington, Texas, Atlanta, visiting